Hi everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Adda with Aavishkaar Capital. This is our second episode, and after the overwhelming response we got to the first one with our investee checkbook, we're here presenting you another special edition with GoBolt, who's transforming the logistics space in India. Glad to have all the three co-founders with us here today, Naitik, Parag, and Sumit. Welcome to this edition of Adda with Aavishkaar Capital. Great to have you. And leading this conversation with them will be our director, Disha Gandhi. So without further ado, Disha, over to you.
Thanks, Sudhanshu, and a very warm welcome to GoBolt promoters Parag, Sumit, and Naitik. Welcome to Adda with Aavishkaar, as Sudhanshu mentioned. This is the second episode in our series, a series that is meant to have a light conversation with our promoters to know their entrepreneurial journey and motivations a little up close. Before we begin, I want to start with congratulating all three of you and the entire team at GoBolt for completing 7 years. I know you all recently celebrated the foundation day, so hearty congratulations. I'm sure you all have spent some time in reflecting how this journey has been for you. So quite coincidental for us to have this interaction timed around the same time. And so the first question would be from my side to understand what triggered the entrepreneurial shift for each of you all. I know you all had been in corporate lives before this. So what made you shift to being an entrepreneur?
So with my perspective, I've been a professional with respect to my education, then doing job with IOCL, then working with GSK post my MBA, right? I would not say that the reason of startup or the motivation of startup was an attractive or a hard or a challenging life or an entrepreneurial journey, right? The reason of startup was that getting engrossed into something, right? We were part of supply chain team, and we could see things, right, which you can say in general language, low-lying fruits, which can definitely hit the efficiencies across and can make a great impact. But when you work in a corporate setup, right, the impact timing is very, very huge. You do an action, right, that impact may take another 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to a year, right? It tends to build you can say I would not say frustration, but sense of thing that it is there and I can do it. I know this is the right way, right? But that right way and the right part will take a lot of time. So for me personally, motivating towards doing a startup was that if I'm able to identify some gaps and I'm able to convince my ecosystem to address those gaps, the time to address those gaps will definitely shorten, reduce, and we'll be able to see a huge impact, right, with a faster time. That was a whole thought process or the basic motivation for being associated or starting a startup rather than a corporate life.
Continuing Parag's point, we were working with GSK back in 2014-15, wherein I was in logistics. I was handling part of primary logistics, and we could clearly see a lot of inefficiencies there. And I think it was 2014 when a thought started beginning in our mind that how to improve it, because we saw the logistics in India was very, very slow, and the transit times were very high. For example, in Bangalore, Gurgaon, Bangalore, it used to take 7 to 8 days for a truck to reach. And that point in time, we started figuring that we need to contribute to this sector. And then we started freezing our plans, me and Parag sat, and we used to have many meetings on Sundays and Saturdays. And we deliberated this for around 6 to 8 months and before taking a plunge. And on a lighter note, at that point in time, there was a web series, TVF Pictures, that came in, and that also inspired that for us, because we come from a family where our parents have been doing a job and they were a part of a government job for 20, 25, 30 years, and they did not even change the jobs for. So if you ask the parents, and they used to say stability is very important. So with the changing times, I think that web series also helped us to take a plunge, and I left frankly without Parag and Sumit leaving the job. I said I'm going to do it, and then all these came. Both of them came after 3 or 4 months.
My reason was more rudimentary than Parag's and ethics. I've always wanted to do something value adding, more value adding with life. Okay, and I used to work in finance sector, consulting sector. I had no inclination or no clue of a supply chain sector as well. Okay. But I've always thought that while working with investment banks, private equity companies, that there's limitation to what you can do. You are very well defined by your roles. Okay. Because you work in setups that have existed for long. These are tried and tested setups. Okay. So there's not much slack for anyone to make mistakes and learn. You have to learn what it is. And for me, it is always the other. I have to see it firsthand. Okay, I just cannot absorb it that okay, this is a gospel truth and you have to follow this. So I formed a group post my MBA. Parag was part of that group where we used to exchange ideas. Okay, we used to do that. What can we do? Okay, what is that requires attention? What is that we can look into? We had many ideas. We explored healthcare sector. We did explore fitness sector. I personally come from finance, and I have a finance family as well. My entire family is into accounts and finance. So I explored a few ideas into fintech as well. So finally, when Parag called me that this is what I am planning with Natik, and I explored this, found this interesting, big sector, not much happening that time. So I thought let's give it a crack. On the family front side, also I got motivation because this is what is very similar to what my father as well did. Okay, he left his cushy job and started his own company. So that was always on the back of my mind that yes, I can take that risk. If my father with very limited resources at that time could have done, I am blessed with much more than what he had. So there's absolute no reason for me not to take this risk. And I'm glad that I took the risk with people like Parag and Natik, who I can trust, I enjoy working with, and a good sector to work in as well. So yeah.
That's good to know. But I've heard sort of different motivations for each of you all to start your own venture or to start a company of your own. How has your idea of entrepreneurship changed from when probably you wanted to start out to what has been your experience in the last 7 years?
Frankly speaking, entrepreneurship is definitely not what you think entrepreneurship is from the other side of the table, right? It feels very jazzy, it feels very comfortable. You get a feeling that you have a position of power, you have a position of you can say everything is done by your actions, right? When you start that entrepreneurship or startup journey, you tend to realize, right, that it is very, very difficult. Okay, there were moments in our life, right, in which I remember we started in September 2015. Me, Sumit, and Natik discussing over a dinner, right, what we need to do next, right? We were in January 2016. We were able to get good attraction with respect to our customers, with respect to marquee customers. But still, that thought process, right, it hits you again and again. Because in your mind, what you do is you basically benchmark small success parameters, right? That in T is equal to 1 month, this needs to be the success. T is equal to 2 months, this needs to be the success, right? And frankly speaking, at the start, the failure rate is 100%. You tend to miss each and every KPI or the success milestone which you have defined for yourself in the first 6 months, right? Then slowly you understand and reality hits you that entrepreneurship was never about power. Entrepreneurship was never about that I want to do this, now I can do this. Entrepreneurship was far, far difficult than convincing people in the corporate life to get a job done rather than your team, your ecosystem, your customers, right, to do that. The major difference, right, which I see between corporate life and entrepreneurship life is I define every action into an influence of control, right? And when we have sales discussion with Sumit, I always tell them that there are different roles, right? As a corporate life, whatever actions needs to be taken, right, to convince the management, to convince the boss, right? You are in a far, far comfortable space, right? Because the locus of control is internal. You want to take an action, your growth is determined by your hard work, your growth is determined by your network, your ideas, right? When you come to startup journey or entrepreneurship journey, right, the locus of controls, you'd never realize it becomes external, right? You need money. Investor is an external locus of control. You need to convince the customer of the idea that yes, I'm into a faster transit space, right? You need to give me business. I will ensure that it reaches on time. That operation is also external locus of control because you are not behind the wheels, the driver is there. So somehow in this entrepreneurship journey, in first 6 months, the realization hits that nothing is in control, right? The only, I would say the only solace with the initial momentum of this journey is that you started this organization with your friends, right? You had a shoulder to cry upon, you had a shoulder to drink, right? And then you go away with all the tension, right? Similarly, when I was talking to Sumit with respect to sales, he comes up and say that my profile is 90% external locus of control, only 10% is internal locus of control. So that has been the major shift when I say that experience of the startup journey and the corporate life. Sitting today, right, with a startup which have achieved, I will say at least the first milestone we would have benchmarked for us, right? I would still say corporate life was far more comfortable. Startup life is far more tough, but the toughness get compensated by the excitement, dynamics, the exposure, the different verticals, the different people you talk to, right? So each gets compensated. But at the other side of the table, it looked a very comfortable journey, which is definitely not a comfortable journey. That is something I'm 100% sure.
I was a supply chain professional before starting GoBolt, and working in GoBolt gave me a lot of exposure of other functions as well, and having an entire P&L responsibility. So before this entrepreneurship journey, it is more about how you manage your own function, right? And supply chains are generally cost functions, so you tend to only bother about costs, right? When we started, I think we faced multiple challenges, starting with what is the problem that you're solving. Then the first problem, then it came what is the right team, founding team. Then we moved to how to sell this idea and get the first line of the team that those are ready to join you. So after that, getting funds became another journey. We raised the funds and then getting another set of a teams, building a scalable team and technology behind it became a journey. So I think it started with an idea that we are solving a problem, and then it continued with getting experiences of different facets of an entire organization. So it gives you all across sort of a CEO experience. The entrepreneurship gives you a CEO experience wherein you know how to manage your top line, how to work on the costs, how to build the teams, how to focus on technology, and also how to allocate resources at right points in time in different functions. So I think that is a very good experience that I've got. And also, I feel it is all about execution because working as a supply chain professional before the startup journey, we used to give certain weightage to execution and a large weightage to the part of strategy because whatever we used to decide, we were MBA grads, that used to get executed, right? Then when we started, got to know how difficult is the execution. So I would say 60-70% of the work is more around the back end, the hustle and the execution, which never comes to limelight. And the things that come to limelight is only when we reach those milestones, right? So that is my entrepreneurial journey and how I put it.
Basically, my experience is a bit different from what Parag and Naitik had, because some of the aspects of entrepreneurship I had seen secondhand in my family, as I mentioned. Okay, I'd seen the frustration of initially not being able to do much, getting the first customers, not being at home, take a family taking a back seat, okay, and not knowing that what challenges next day might bring in. Okay, this, although not as a primary participant, but as a family member, I've seen, I've experienced. And your family is together in this journey, much like my family is together in this entrepreneurial journey with me. It's not just that I am the founder of the company. It's like the entire family is the founder of the company because they face the same ups and downs that we face. So some part of it was already ingrained into my system. What was not ingrained was possibly working with different people. Okay, understanding what their perspectives are, acknowledging their perspectives, putting the greater good in terms of front in instead of your own personal good. or possibly understanding that what my thought is might not be the best thought in the room. Okay. Because typically when you work alone, you have a proprietorship company, there's not much stakeholders you work around with. Okay. It's your perspective, how you want to run it, your mistakes, and possibly you give yourself a long rope, you give yourself a long patience. So things are very different. But when you work in a setup like this, you have more than one founders, you have different board, you bring in investors, etc. There is a very different kind of learning, which for me has been the most important aspects of my entrepreneurial journey, which I've never seen before, is basically acknowledging things that might be better with others, possibly understanding their perspective. Okay, it broadens your horizon, it broadens your thought process, seeing from different angles. Possibly I've never thought it from one aspect, and Natik or Parag teaches me to think it from different aspect, or vice versa. So that is one. The second additional responsibility was, of course, to learn a sector, because I'm starting something which they have some experience working in their previous organizations. I did not bring in any kind of a sectoral experience. What I've brought was a very different perspective. I've always been associated with some kind of an external role, either through a consultant or investment banking, or finally in a fund. Okay, I was always involved. I was an RM in investment banking, in the fund as well side. So it's always been working with people. So that helped me a lot in generating the kind of sales that we have seen over here. Of course, it's a technical sector. You need to learn aspects, but I learned it on the way. So a bit of a different challenge, started understanding it, started relishing it, because it's very different from what I've seen. Okay, logistics work very different from finance sector. Okay, people are very different, the thought processes are very different. Okay, and how you interact with them, all is very different. So, but yeah, it has been a great journey. And much like Natik said, you develop a 360-degree personality. You do everything. Okay, it's not just that you have the leverage, or you have the I would say flexibility of focusing on something. Initially, as we were 3, then we became 4, 5, 10, 50. Okay, you had to look into many things, and that really hones your skills. That really makes you accountable, responsible, and you basically can handle anything. You can handle any kind of challenge that life throws up to you, even professional or personal. It develops your personality for that. It makes you ready for a much harder life. So yeah, that has been a good change, positive change that has happened in personally to me, from a corporate experience to a entrepreneurial life.
I noticed that each of you all have mentioned fundraising as being a critical aspect and a challenging aspect as such as well. For your formative years and as the company continues to grow. So, and you have been one of those companies that have been able to raise capital through both angels as well as institutions. So, just want to get your thoughts on how do you see the value add being different from angels and institutions, and especially when you have both on the cap table at the same point in time, how do you do the alignment management at the board level?
I'm thinking what was to speak and what was not to speak. But you're absolutely right. As a startup, we've been fortunate enough to get an investment from my angel, then a institution, and then again in the next round more towards a investor, which has an overlap with PE as well, right? So with respect to managing, I'll tell you how did the fundraise happen, right? What is the thought process which we believe each of these investors came with, right? With respect to the group they were representing, and then probably that will also help us realize that how to manage them. So when we talk about the angel round, right, the business model was, you can say, was more on paper, right? The execution was not established, right? And the angels fund basically seeing the faces of the promoters and their thought process, right? They like to see a lot of energy. Then they like to see that what has been the benchmarking, what is the type of business they are doing, right? Is it a very, you can say, extreme idea, or it is something a very which we call evergreen idea, but needs to be done more efficiently, right? So angels basically try to see these things. When we come to institutions have a very different perspective altogether, right? They do focus on the promoters at a certain stage, right? What are these promoters capable of? but their major bandwidth or focus goes on the business model, the benchmarking, the returns they're expecting. Although every investor expects a good return, but with respect to institutions, right, the expectation is sometimes very high, right, with respect to that what is the return I'm expecting out of it, right? Now, when we talk about managing it through the board, right, we realize what is that which someone wants to see, right, and someone wants to validate, right? So just as an example, on no name basis, I will not tell who acted how, right? If there is any business idea, if I have to convince my angel, I have to give him the future promise and the conviction I have, right, to propagate that idea or to move forward with that idea or get an approval. If I have to convince an institution, right, I don't have to show energy and future promise. That is the eligibility criteria. I have to follow a risk diversification analysis, right? I have to make scenarios that suppose this happens, this risk can be mitigated like this happens, this risk can be mitigated like this. And further, when you move to a type of investor with an overlapping of PE, right, then you also comes to end of the PNL. Very simple. That what is the economic advantage of the decision? What are the different timelines, right? We see a output of that. Now, the difference between angel and institution in this example is that angel will listen to the timeline once, but institution will again come back after 3 months and said that you gave me this economic return after 3 months. Where is that economic return? So that way, the angel is little sweet, right? He tends to give permission with respect to understanding and future profits. And institution is more data oriented and seeing that what was promised and how much it is delayed, right? But having said that, with respect to GoBolt, we have been lucky enough, right? Basis the institution also acknowledging our thought process and allowing us to take risk with a certain level of obviously diversification. And angels also pushing us. We have been a typical case in which I think we were the only case in which angels were following up the PNL month on month and asking that how much money was burned, how much money is saved, how much money is invested, right? So we have an experience throughout, and we have been very lucky with respect to the type of investors we got in GoBolt to give us different perspective, behaving very differently from generally what we know about institutions or angels.
I think angel investing is more about they look more to an idea, the founding team, the energy in the founding team, and the start technology, what technology or what curve they are. If we talk about institutional investors, they look a startup from a point of view that how big it can scale up, right? So they look at the total addressable market. That is one of the key points that is there, and what are the competitive modes that are there, right? And that are going to stay when the startup scales up, right? So I would say the institutionals really make the startup a larger organization, and hence what they look into a startup is also from when this becomes a larger organization, whether it will have that right to do business or right to survive in the market or not. And I think these are the key differences between institutional investor and angel. And the rest, all the controls, everything, internal controls are really to take care of this only, right? They would obviously want more professional controls. The institutional want the team to be, you should have that first line of leadership, second line of leadership built in a way that the organization scale. So the idea behind is the market should be large enough, the startup should be scalable, and it should have that competitive modes in place when it scales up so that it has the right to exist and right to do business. So that's my 2 cents on it.
There is a reason why angels are early stage and typically institutions are made to later stage, because that's where they are the most relevant. Okay, I'll take it as an example of how a baby is born. Okay, and in its initial formative years, okay, what's more required is flexibility. Okay, what more requires is more emotions. Okay, what's more required is more warmth, and basically things are not very ingrained into that. Okay, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. As the baby grows, of course, you have to look into what the footing habits are, you have to look into schooling, you have to look into other kind of things. And that's how an organization journey also happens. Initially, when an organization is formed, before following the T2 compliances or following the T2 governances or following the T2 different kind of other institutional requirement. First, you have to find your feet. First, you have to understand why do you exist and whether you'll exist or not. Okay. First, you have to understand that among, if it's in the cluttered market, what's your right to exist, what's your right to win. You have to find your moat, you have to find your defensibility, you have to experiment a lot. Okay, you have to fail a lot, much like how a child would fall a lot before starting to walk. And that's where the patience and personal touch of an angel comes into picture. Okay, because their expectations are very different. They are not here as an alternate investment. Of course, everyone loves money, but the angels are looking more than what possibly there is to make money. They're also here to possibly satisfy a need, a want, in terms of, if I wasn't able to do this, possibly I can help others do it. Or if I have done it, possibly I have enough knowledge to impart to personally take care and handhold people when it is required. And when the time is ripe, then you need the processes, the compliances of an institution, because then you have to scale for future. You can't be uh, purely emotional about certain things and look into building a sustainable business. Then practicalities have to come into picture. Then processes, then governances, everything has to come into picture. And that's where the role of an institution comes in. And that's where we have been lucky, as Parag said. Our angel was also a bit institutionalized and our institution was also a bit emotional. Okay, so we got the best of the both worlds. Yeah. So for a very fine line for us to, even if we would want to divide the two experiences, a very fine line. It's hugely overlap, but yeah, there are certain differences that one should expect and one does see.
From an organization building perspective, because there has been a diverse experience, and I do agree to your point that fortunately there is a meeting of minds on the broader sort of strategy and the broader sort of way forward across everybody over there. And that's again, credited to the promoters again, because you've been able to sort of get those kind of alignment by individual conversations as well and set the expectations, at a sort of at a steady level across all the different stakeholders. So that of course helps us as well in our inter-investor conversations too. Just quickly moving on and to sort of get a quick sort of thoughts. You guys have done a fair bit of fundraising now, right? About 4 rounds across sort of different angels, institutions, etc. Any sort of memories on pitches or conversations with investors which still sort of haunt you, or probably you look back at upon fondly, like any sort of recollections on that?
The fondest memory is sitting across to different angel funds. I and Parag usually used to go, okay, sell them and tell them our different ideas, come out and discuss within ourselves that, yeah, what went wrong or what went, can you read into the expressions? What do you think? So it used to delve a lot. If I was pitching, Parag used to observe and we used to discuss. If Parag was pitching, I used to do this. There were certain cases, no name basis, where we basically were mixed up in certain numbers. But I would remember that was a Mumbai. And after that, we went out for a drink. And we just said, what has happened to us, boss? Basic maths kaise bhul gaye? Okay, so that was one thing that sticks to me. And Parag would know, Parag would remember as well. So yeah, very good fond memories.
Yes, the investor Sumit is talking about is definitely not on our board, right? It's a very big name in which me and Sumit were discussing that he was just asking about the P&L. How can we mess that up? And we could see in that investor's expression, oh, these guys don't know numbers, which was supposed to be a strength moving forward. But apart from that, and Sumit mentioned it correctly, this is the memory which always, I would not say very fond memory, apart from the fact that we went out for drinking, but a memory that haunts me. But all the fundraisers, right? So I always ask myself, right, that what are these investors made of? Whether there's an angel, whether there's an private equity, right? There is one question which everyone asks, right? And their expectation is that whatever you answer, right, 360-degree, they'll try to tell you that this answer is wrong. So that particular question with every pitch, which is a standard. And if investment was a course, I don't know if there's an education course, that question would take 1 year of study. That question is, what is your moat, right? Now that's a very, very beautiful question. I'll tell you why. When we talk about logistics, right, you can say that's a traditional business. What is a moat? Then we heard people saying technology is a moat. Then investor used to answer, technology can never be a moat. How can technology be a moat? Technology to a bande low, and then you'll be able to build. You just spend 10 times. Technology is not a moat. Okay. Then what is a moat? The market I'm targeting is moat. No, it cannot be a moat. Today you are working this market. Suppose today you have 100% capturing of that market as well. Tomorrow anyone will copy you, who will have more money, who will give you lesser rates. He will get away the customer, take the customer. Okay, then what is a moat? So I thought that investors are looking for a moat in angel round, that someone should come for investing after they have 20 years of market experience, and they have a market share which is indefensible. They have a network of 20 years, but still at that point of time, the investors want to do angel funding, venture funding, not private equity funding. So sometimes this is the memory, right? I would not say haunt, but this is the answer. I think I'm not being able to satisfy any investor, because investors are definitely not looking for the answer. I personally believe investors are looking for ideas of moat, which they can cut, whether there's technology, there's market share, there's network. I heard someone saying, when I talked about the fact that PTL is a defensible business, you can build network. Arey, it is very easy. You take 200 crore rupees, you burn 200 crore rupees, you enjoy running free vehicles, the network is set. You take 100 crore rupees, hire technology team, go to IIT, hire people, technology is set. So I never understood what is moat, to be very honest. So that's my biggest, you can say, the memory which haunts me or which makes me laugh. That what is the right answer of this question for any company altogether?
No, I can hear a lot of people who are sort of listening to this resonate with this and say a very loud yes, right, while they are listening to you say this. And your point is sort of well taken as well. But some of these questions are asked to just sort of understand the promoters and not the business, right? Just to sort of lay the ground clear on that one. But quickly sort of moving on, and because we're talking of what are the difficult questions that the investors ask, right? Coming to a slightly more personal and a slightly difficult question, it would be great to understand what does success mean for each of you in respect of your entrepreneurial journey that you have begun at GoBolt.
Right. So for me personally, and I'm sure nothing and Suman would have different views altogether. Yeah. For me personally, success is defined by two things, right? One is with respect to the organization we have co-founded, right? Generating value for my stakeholders. Now, when I say generating value for my stakeholders, I don't want to take it a very typical answer, that it's an academic answer, the generating value for the stakeholders. I personally believe that it should be generating value for the stakeholders, including you, right? And giving good returns, right? That is a definition of success for me, just with one condition. In the path to do that, right? In the path to achieve that, I just want, and that would be the most happiest moment in my life. The two things which I want is, I don't leave people, right, who have been with me on that path while achieving that success, and I don't lose my health, right? These are the two things, right? If I don't lose and I'll be able to generate value for the stakeholders, that is a success definition, at least for me, right? Not just generating value for the stakeholders, but generating value for the stakeholders by these two conditions. So that would be, I would say, the most satisfying thing for me, right? And that is what success is for me.
For me, I think success is loving what you do, right? And it's not a destination. It's like a everyday journey that is there. If you come to work and you love the work that you do, I think you sooner or later you will be successful in your eyes. For this venture that we've started, we are, at least I'm looking at that we are able to do an IPO of the company and how we'll be able to establish the success of starting this venture, GoBolt. Success in life for me is, I think, creating something that outlives me. It may not be a company, it may be a company, it may be an equation that is remembered all the time, or something, some research. I keep success in life as a very open term, right? And creating something that outlives me and loving that journey is the successful.
For me, it's basically, I've always, as I said, was looking out that what I can do, how I can add more value. Okay. So for me, it's the value addition that I do all around. Okay. Be it into my personality, success is, if I look back from here 5 years back, I'm possibly a better person. Okay. In terms of emotions, in terms of having better sensibilities, if having better knowledge. Okay, being able to make more difference, or possibly being able to generate a sustainable livelihood for many. Okay, possibly we three had taken 3 jobs, but now we are providing 1,000 of them. So really feels good that yes, of course, in people who have put their trust across us, we have not failed them. Okay, and also we have been able to do certain things that were looked improbable, if not impossible. And when you look back, you feel good. Yes, possibly you can define it as a success.
Thank you so much for taking out the time. This has actually been a fun session. I did get to learn a little bit more about each of you all, despite spending so much of time with you all. And probably we'll catch up on this in person as well and take these conversations ahead. But thank you so much for sharing your insights, and all the best for GoBolt and for each of you for the near future.
Thanks, Disha, for moderating a wonderful discussion. And Naitik, Parag, Sumit, once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being as candid as possible and giving us some amazing insights into each of yours very distinct entrepreneurial journey. And that's it, folks, from here, from all of us here at Adda with Aavishkaar Capital. This brings to a close of episode 2. Like we've mentioned, there are many more to come. So stay tuned and follow us on our different social media channels, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. The next episode will feature a very, very upcoming and promising ag tech from our portfolio. So until then, bye for now.